You never really know a person, not all the way through. No matter how many years you share a bed, raise children, bury pets, argue over casseroles, or hold each other through midnight sickness, there are corners of a soul that stay shuttered. Quiet little rooms where secrets sleep. I used to think love was the same thing as truth, that if someone loved you, truly loved you, they wouldn't have any reason to lie. But grief has a strange way of handing you truths you never asked for, wrapped in silence and sealed in envelopes with no return address. This story isn't just about what I lost. It's about what I found in the quiet after. The kind of finding that knocks the wind out of you. If you enjoy stories like these, I'd be mighty grateful if you'd subscribe, give it a like, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It always means something when folks like you take the time to listen. Now, let me take you back to the morning it all began. It was raining the day we buried Henry. That fine, needling kind of rain that soaks you through no matter how tightly you cinch your coat. I remember the way my black glove stuck to the little brass handle of the umbrella, how the preacher's voice cracked on the word faithful, and how the earth looked like it was weeping alongside us. After the service, folks milled around the church basement with weak coffee and sympathy smiles. I stood near the punch bowl, half-dazed, smiling at people I barely knew. That's when I noticed it. An ivory envelope, no name, no stamp. Just resting there on the seat of my purse like it had always belonged. Inside was one sentence, typed, not written. He wasn't who you thought he was. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I didn't show it to anyone. I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew what it meant. But from that moment on, I stopped mourning a man and started investigating a stranger. I keep Henry's wedding band in a little ceramic dish on the windowsill above the sink. It's shaped like a seashell, glazed in pale blue. He made it in a pottery class we took together back in '84, before the kids, before the white in our hair. The ring glints in the morning light as I rinse our 2 mugs, still 2 out of habit. Some days, I stare at it and feel nothing but sorrow. Other days, like today, it feels like a lie wrapped in gold. It's been 6 months since the funeral. The letter stayed hidden in my nightstand drawer, buried under old receipts and crossword books, until last night when I found it again. I read it 5 times in the dark. He wasn't who you thought he was. I whispered it out loud just to see how it tasted. And my dear, it tasted like truth. Maybe it was the thunder rolling in, or maybe it was the ache that's never quite left my chest. But something in me said, it's time. Time to open the door I've been so scared to knock on. So I poured myself some coffee, fed Muffin her breakfast, and sat down at the kitchen table with the envelope, ready to finally begin. Henry Whitford wasn't a perfect man, but he was a reliable one. That was always his word, reliable. If he said he'd fix the porch light, it got fixed even if it took 3 weeks. If he promised to be home by 6, he might walk in at 6:15, flowers in hand. He wore wristwatches long after everyone else started checking their phones, said he liked the ticking. It reminded him that time was alive, and we were lucky to be inside it. We met in 1976 at a state fair in Columbia. He sold insurance. I taught 10th grade English. He spilled lemonade on my skirt at a bluegrass tent, and apologized with such bashful sincerity that I laughed instead of cussed. 3 months later, we were engaged. People called us a good match. I was the heart, he was the spine. I read poetry at dinner. He balanced the checkbook with a stubby pencil. I cried at films. He held my hand and passed tissues. When our daughter, Lila, was born, he built her crib from scratch and read Goodnight Moon every single night for the first year. We had a son too, Andrew. Our wild card. He had Henry's square jaw but my stormy moods. The two of them butted heads something awful during the teenage years, but there was love under all that thunder. Our home was modest. A split level on Sycamore Lane, red shutters, gardenia bushes along the porch. Henry mowed the lawn every Saturday at 9 sharp, wearing a straw hat that made him look like a farmer with a 401k. I kept a clothesline in the back even after the dryer worked fine, said it gave the sheets a soul. We had rituals. Sunday roast, crossword races, Friday jazz on the record player. We made each other birthday breakfasts in bed until our hips got too cranky for balancing trays. In our 42 years together we had arguments, some loud, some long. But we also had forgiveness, and laughter that could shake the dishes in the hutch. I believed I knew him. So when the letter came, my dear, it cracked something in me. Not just grief but doubt. A little splinter of what if that kept me up at night. The first thing I did after reading it again was call Lila. She answered on the second ring, breathless. "Hi, Mama," she said, chewing something. "Is everything okay?" "Oh yes, baby. I just wanted to hear your voice, I suppose." A pause. "You sound funny. What's going on?" "Nothing pressing," I lied. "You know me. Mornings get lonely sometimes." Lila lives 2 hours away, with her husband Neil and their twin boys. She tries to call every other day, visits once a month. Always brings soup. Always worries I'm not eating enough. I didn't tell her about the letter. Not yet. After we hung up, I went looking. Not just through drawers and files but through memory. I started retracing steps, revisiting old conversations. Had there been signs? Half-truths? Doors I hadn't thought to open? The first real clue came in a place I hadn't visited in years, the attic. I hadn't been up in the attic since before Henry got sick. His knees made the ladder a no-go, and mine weren't much better. But that morning I pulled a chair from the dining room, climbed up slow and pushed open the creaky hatch. The air smelled like cedar and dust. I felt the dry warmth settle on my shoulders like an old shawl. It was dim up there, just one little bulb swaying from a string. But I could make out the familiar silhouettes. Christmas bins, Lila's old dollhouse, Andrew's baby mobile, the trunk we never opened but never threw away. I shuffled toward it, that trunk. It had been Henry's when he was a boy, dark green with a brass clasp. He'd kept old baseball cards in it once, then photo albums, then who knows what. Last time I asked, he said, "Just tax stuff and boring papers." But when I opened it, it wasn't boring at all. On top was a stack of letters, rubber-banded, yellowed at the edges. My name was nowhere on them. Nor his. They were addressed to someone named Michael, written in a woman's hand. I sat cross-legged on a quilt Henry's mother had sewn, and I read. Letter after letter. The earliest was from 1985, the latest just 4 years ago. The return address changed towns, but the tone never did. Warm. Familiar. Intimate. Things like, "I missed your voice this week. I swear I hear you in the wind." Or, "She'll never know if we keep it safe." Or simply, "I hate Sundays without you." I counted 27 letters. Not a single one signed with a last name. Just C. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in a faded blue shirt, was a photograph. It was Henry. A younger Henry, maybe late 40s. He was sitting on a park bench beside a woman I didn't recognize. She had short auburn hair and a smile that bent toward him like a sunflower. His hand was resting on hers. I stared at it until the bulb above me flickered. Until my legs went numb. Until Muffin started yowling downstairs like she could feel the tremble in my chest. When I climbed back down, the house felt different. Still mine but hollowed. Like someone had taken a scoop right out of the middle. I put the letters back in the trunk and carried the photograph with me. I set it on the kitchen table next to my cold coffee and whispered, "Who are you?" Not to the woman in the photo. To Henry. The days that followed were filled with a strange quiet. Not the peaceful kind that comes with a slow Sunday or a nap on the porch swing, but the kind that hums under your skin waiting. The kind of silence that makes clocks tick louder and creaky floorboards sound like thunder. I kept the photograph in a drawer by the sink. I told myself I wouldn't look at it again, but each morning like clockwork my hand found it. I'd study her face, the woman with auburn hair, and try to place it. A parent from Lila's school? Someone from Henry's office? But there was nothing familiar in her eyes. No memory to anchor her name. I considered calling Andrew, but he and I hadn't been on the easiest terms lately. He'd taken Henry's passing hard in a quiet, clenched way, grief packed tight behind a wall of sarcasm and distance. He called once a week, always rushed, always with noise in the background. I didn't want to add to his weight. Instead, I went to the library. There's a comfort to old libraries, isn't there? That musty, dusty smell of paper aging slowly. Mrs. Evelyn still runs the front desk, bless her heart, with those horn-rimmed glasses and a voice like an exasperated sparrow. She hadn't seen me in months. "Ellie Whitford," she said, lowering her copy of Reader's Digest. "Well, I'll be. You've lost weight." "Grief will do that," I said gently. She gave a little nod, the way Southern women do when they don't know whether to hug you or change the subject. I need to use the microfiche, I told her. She blinked. You serious? Dead. You and 5 ghosts. That thing's older than Moses. We both laughed. It was the first time in weeks that I felt something close to lightness. I spent the better part of that afternoon hunched over clunky reels, scrolling through obituaries, marriage announcements, and public records. I was looking for her. For the woman in the photo. But I didn't even have a last name. It wasn't until I cross-referenced Henry's travel logs from his old planner. Yes, I'd found those too, tucked in his filing cabinet, that something clicked. A trip to Asheville in 1997. A conference in 2004 that matched a date on one of her letters. And one particularly suspicious entry labeled only M weekend. Michael. My dear, that's when it hit me. What if Henry wasn't Henry to her? What if he had another name, another life? That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was a carousel of names, dates, and lies that hummed like electricity in my bones. I sat at the kitchen table, that old photograph in one hand, a notepad in the other, scribbling timelines like I was some half-baked detective in a grief-soaked mystery novel. Michael, I whispered into the dark. Was that who you were with her? The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office. It's housed in a beige brick building with humming fluorescent lights and a receptionist who smelled like cinnamon gum and suspicion. I asked for any public records tied to a Henry Whitford, born in 1952. She gave me a side-eye that could cut glass, but 20 minutes later, I had a folder in my hands. Most of it was what I expected: our marriage license, property deeds, his insurance license. But tucked in the back under a different filing tag was a legal document I had never seen before. It was a lease agreement. Not in Charleston. In Hendersonville. A tiny town tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 3 hours from home. The lease was in the name of Michael H. Carter. And the signature at the bottom matched Henry's handwriting. My breath caught. My knees went soft. I must have sat there for 10 minutes just staring at that name. Michael Carter. Henry's middle name was Howard. H for Howard. C for Carter, his mother's maiden name. A makeshift alias made from pieces of himself. The lease had begun in 2005 and ended in 2019. 14 years. 14 years of a secret life. 14 years of weekends and Wednesday nights working late. 14 years of lying to the woman he kissed goodnight. I remember standing in the courthouse parking lot, staring at the map on my phone. Hendersonville looked so small, so harmless. Just a dot in the folds of the mountains. I traced my finger over the route. 3 hours and 12 minutes. That was all that separated the life I knew from the one he hid. And in that moment I decided I would go. I would drive to Hendersonville, walk into whatever world he built there, and find out who he was really. Not my Henry. Michael. The morning I left for Hendersonville, the sky hung low and gray, like it knew I was driving into something I might not want to see. I packed light. Just a weekend bag, my notepad, and the photograph. Muffin stared at me from the windowsill, tail twitching like she could sense the unraveling. I didn't tell Lila or Andrew. Just left a note on the fridge that said, "Gone to visit an old friend. Back soon. Love, Mama." The drive wound through hills and pine-stitched valleys. The farther I got from Charleston, the tighter the knot in my stomach pulled. But with every mile, I also felt something else, clarity maybe. A kind of cold resolve that steadied my hands on the wheel. Hendersonville was charming in the way small towns often are. Flower boxes on windowsills. A bakery that smelled like childhood. And just off Main Street, nestled behind a gas station and a shuttered antique shop, sat a one-story brick building with green shutters and a mailbox labeled Carter, Unit 4B. My breath hitched. It was real. I parked across the street and sat there a while, engine off, heart hammering. I'd rehearsed a dozen introductions in my head. Emilia Whitford, Henry's wife. Or maybe just, I think you knew someone named Michael. I didn't know who'd be behind that door. I didn't even know if anyone still lived there. But I had to know. I crossed the street, knocked once, twice. Nothing. I was about to turn away when the door creaked open. And there she was. The woman from the photograph. Her hair was streaked with gray now, tied back in a loose bun. She wore a cardigan over a faded t-shirt, and her eyes, hazel sharp, narrowed the moment she saw me. "Can I help you?" she said, polite but wary. I swallowed hard. I think you knew my husband." She blinked. "I'm sorry, who? Henry Whitford? Or Michael Carter?" Silence stretched between us like a clothesline hung with invisible weight. Then she stepped back. Just slightly. "You better come in." Her living room was small but warm. Soft yellow walls, crocheted throws, a wooden hutch with teacups displayed like tiny memories. A photograph of a tabby cat sat on the mantel. The smell of cinnamon and something floral, lavender maybe, hung in the air. She gestured to the couch. "Isette." She took the armchair across from me, folded her hands in her lap like a woman about to testify. "My name's Clara," she said quietly. "Clara Dunn." I nodded, the name clicking softly into place. "You wrote him letters." She didn't deny it, just looked down, then back at me with a mix of guilt and defiance. "I didn't know about you. Not at first." "How long?" Her eyes welled but her voice stayed steady. 18 years. I flinched. It wasn't just the number. It was the calm with which she said it, like she'd already lived the ache 1,000 times. "I met him at a music festival in Asheville," she went on. "He told me his name was Michael Carter, said he was divorced, said his children lived far away." My breath caught. "He wasn't divorced. I know that now." Clara reached over to the side table and pulled out a photograph, different from mine. In this one, Henry, or Michael as she knew him, was laughing. His arms around Clara's waist. A lake shimmered behind them. They looked like honeymooners, carefree, young though they weren't. "I loved him," she said softly. "God help me, I did." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My tongue felt like sandpaper in my mouth. "He never stayed overnight," she said. "He'd drive up on weekends, sometimes just for a few hours. We'd go to the farmer's market, cook dinner, dance to old records." Her smile was small, sad. "He knew how to waltz. Said his mother taught him." "She did," I whispered. She looked at me then, eyes swimming. "I swear to you, I didn't know he was lying. When I found out, I ended it." "When?" 2019. Right after the lease ended. I told him I couldn't live in a shadow anymore. We sat in silence for a long time. Then Clara stood and disappeared into the hallway. She returned with a box, old worn, filled with folded notes, postcards, and a small silver locket. "I kept everything," she said, voice trembling. "I don't know why. Maybe I was waiting for this day." I reached for the box, hands shaking. Inside was a birthday card, dated 5 years ago. It read, "To my Clara. Another year, another reason I love you. Yours always, M." I closed my eyes. The man I buried had signed every one of my birthday cards with just H. I left Clara's house just as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting the street in gold and sorrow. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, that worn cardigan clutched around her as if it could shield her from the truth she'd been living in pieces. "I'm sorry," she said as I turned to go. "For what it's worth." I nodded. "I believe you." I meant it. Somewhere deep down I did. But belief doesn't soften the blow when your ribs are still reeling. The drive home felt longer. I didn't turn on the radio. Just listened to the wind through the open windows and the hum of the road like a lullaby with no melody. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light was on. The world looked unchanged, gardenias in bloom, wind chimes tinkling, muffin curled in the window. And yet, everything inside me was different. Unspooled. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I poured myself a glass of red wine, cheap but good, and sat at the kitchen table with both boxes, mine from the attic and Clara's, still warm from her lap. I laid everything out. Letters, photographs, postcards, receipts, plane tickets. 2 lives folded together like pages from 2 novels that never should have shared a shelf. I started matching dates, making a timeline. Every time Henry told me he was off for a client lunch, or staying with a buddy in Asheville, there it was, Clara's card dated the same day, her handwriting soft and slanted. He'd even given her flowers on our anniversary once, August 12, 2009. I found the receipt. Different florist. Same roses. The rage didn't come all at once. It crept in slow, like fog through a crack in the door. I threw the wine glass. It shattered against the stove, red pooling like blood across the linoleum. Muffin bolted from the room. My hands shook. Damn you, I whispered. Damn you, Henry. The worst part wasn't that he lied. It was that he had loved us both. And somehow I wasn't sure which life had been real. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and noise. Doors creaking, clocks ticking too loudly, my own breath echoing in rooms that felt suddenly foreign. I moved through the house like a ghost, touching surfaces as if trying to feel what he might have last touched. I found myself sniffing his shirts in the closet, pressing old handkerchiefs to my face as if they held some answer in the scent of cedar and aftershave. But none came. On the third night, Lila called. "You sound tired, Mama," she said, concern threading through her voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby," I lied, staring at the box of Clara's letters. "Just doing some cleaning." She hesitated. "You sure? I could come by this weekend. Bring the boys." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Maybe next week. Let me get the house sorted first." After we hung up, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Andrew. He answered on speakerphone, the faint buzz of an airport behind him. "Hey, Ma," he said, distracted. "I've got like 5 minutes. What's up?" "I need to ask you something," I said slowly. "Did you ever suspect anything about your father?" Silence. Then more silence. "Like what?" "Anything," I said. "Anyone." Another pause. "I mean," he sighed. "I don't know. He was private. But he was always good to you. You don't think." "I know," I whispered. Jesus entre mutered. "Ma, are you okay?" "No," I said truthfully. "But I will be." We didn't speak much after that. Just a quiet goodbye. That night I went back to the attic. I dug through every bin, every box. I was looking for something, anything that might explain why. A journal. Confession. Even a receipt. Instead, I found a safe I didn't know we owned. Tucked behind a stack of holiday decorations, it was small and square, with a keypad I'd never seen Henry use. My heart rattled against my ribs. I tried birthdays. Our anniversary. Lila's name. Nothing worked. Then I tried something that made my stomach lurch even as I typed it. Cielere. The lock clicked open. Inside were 2 things. A photograph of Clara holding a baby I didn't recognize. And a will. Not the one filed with our attorney. This one left half of his life insurance to her. My dear, I didn't breathe for a full minute. He hadn't just loved her. He had a child with her. The photograph trembled in my hands. Clara younger, her auburn hair catching the sun like fire, cradling an infant wrapped in a pale blue blanket. Her smile was tired but luminous, maternal, unguarded. A smile I'd worn myself twice, years ago in hospital rooms with white walls and the scent of antiseptic and joy. On the back, written in Henry's unmistakable hand. Eli, 2007. First light of my second life. I read it 3 times. Second life. I couldn't sleep that night. My body was still, but my mind screamed. Images tumbled like dominoes. Our dinners, our vacations, Henry's sleepy. "I love you," murmured into my neck at 2 a.m. Had he meant it? Or had he been thinking of her? Of the child? He nodded. "I think he was afraid to be whole," I said. "But I'm not. Not anymore." Eli stayed the night in the guest room. I left clean sheets and a book of Southern poetry on the nightstand, just like I used to do for Andrew when he came home from college. In the morning, I found him in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring cereal with the sleepy ease of someone already slipping into family. "You sleep all right?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "Place smells like vanilla and dust. Kinda perfect." We ate breakfast quietly, sunlight pooling on the table like honey. Muffin jumped into his lap, instantly claiming him. I watched them, my cat and my husband's son, settled into a peace I hadn't thought possible just weeks ago. After breakfast, Eli offered to help me in the garden. I handed him gloves and a trowel, and we knelt together among the roses. He asked questions, about soil, about pruning, about the difference between antique and hybrid blooms. I answered with stories more than facts. How Henry used to talk to the roses like they were old friends. How I believed each one bloomed different depending on who planted it. I think he'd like this, Eli said, patting down the dirt around a new stem. Me being here. Helping. I looked at him, his brow furrowed in focus, his gentle hands, and felt the pang of something almost maternal, something aching and tender. I think he'd be scared, I said softly. But yes, I think he'd like it too. That afternoon, we visited Henry's grave. I hadn't been in weeks. Eli stood beside me as I laid a single gardenia on the stone. The breeze lifted my hair. The air smelled of cut grass and memory. Hi, Dad, Eli said. I'm here. He crouched beside the grave and ran his fingers along the carved name. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stood and slipped something from his pocket. A guitar pick. Faded blue. He gave me this when I was 12, he said. Said it belonged to B.B. King. Probably wasn't true. I smiled. Sounds about right. He placed it on the stone. I'm still figuring out what to do with all of this, he said. So am I whispered. But I'm glad I know, he added. Even the hard parts. That night, after I dropped him at the bus station, I sat in my garden long after dark. There was grief still. Of course. There always would be. But there was something else too. Space. Room for the truth to breathe. Room for all of us to become something new. Summer slipped into Charleston the way it always does. Heavy with jasmine, thick with heat, the air buzzing with life that doesn't ask permission. My garden bloomed wider that year than ever before, as if the earth itself had been holding its breath and was finally ready to exhale. I started keeping letters for Eli. Not to send, just to write. I kept them in a wooden box in the hall closet, beside the shoebox of Henry's old cufflinks and my mother's cameo brooch. The first letter began simply. Dear son of my husband, my maybe child by grief. The words flowed differently now. Not like accusation, but confession. Not like pain, but process. One morning, I took down the photograph of Henry and me on our 20th anniversary. The one where he's holding my waist, grinning like a boy who just got away with something. I looked at it for a long time. Then I took it out of the frame. Behind it, tucked into the backboard, was a second photo I'd never seen. It was just me. Younger. Laughing. Someone had taken it from behind while I bent to smell a rose in our backyard. Hair pinned back, shoulders bare in the sun. He'd kept that picture hidden for decades. Not of the woman he lied to. Of the woman he loved. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not for what he'd done, but for what he'd never had the courage to say out loud. He had tried, in his own broken way, to hold on to us both. He had failed, but still he had tried. That night, I placed both photographs on the mantel. Side by side. Not to pretend it was all right, but to accept that it was. It was late August when Lila came by with the twins' muddy knees, sticky fingers, and all the chaos of 8-year-old joy. I made lemonade and sandwiches, and we ate on the porch, laughter spilling over the railing like music. After they'd gone home, I sat alone in the quiet dusk. The sky turned peach, then lavender, the way it always does when summer starts her long goodbye. Clara called that evening. I just wanted to thank you, she said, voice soft, for making room. You didn't ask for it, I said. But I'm glad I could. She hesitated. Eli, he talks about you a lot. Says you remind him of a tree. I laughed, caught off guard. A tree. Sturdy. Still standing. I didn't know what to say. Just held the phone to my ear, heart tender as rain-soaked soil. We hung up soon after. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote one more letter. This one was for Henry. You weren't perfect. Lord knows neither was I. But what we had was real, even when it was wrapped in silence. I hope wherever you are you've found peace. I'm still here, learning how to hold grief and grace in the same hand. Still rocking on the porch swing. Yours in some strange, honest way. Ellie. Then I lit a candle, watched the flame dance, and let the night settle in like a hush. This morning I walked to the garden barefoot, just after sunrise. The air was cool against my skin, the dew kissing my ankles as I passed between rows of old roses, Henry's favorites. I stood there a while listening to the birdsong, the hush of wind in the magnolias. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I smiled. Not the kind you wear to keep others comfortable. The real kind. The one that starts low in the chest, where the truth lives and rises up like a tide. Muffin padded out behind me, tail high, and brushed against my leg as if to say, yes, this is yours. All of it. Even this. I don't believe healing ever finishes. I think it folds into you, like the creases in your hands, like the laugh lines around your eyes. You carry the weight a little differently. You stop flinching at old names. You remember without crumbling. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find that the truth, even when it hurts, can plant something new inside you. My dear, if this story stirred something inside you, the ache of truth, the weight of silence, the strange beauty of forgiveness, I hope you'll carry it gently with you. Grief doesn't just arrive when we lose someone. Sometimes, it walks in long after the funeral, when we find a letter we weren't meant to read, or hear a name we weren't supposed to know. But even then, even in betrayal, love still leaves fingerprints. If you felt something along the way, I'd be mighty grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a little note in the comments, or share this story with someone who might be holding their own quiet question. Tell me, what part stayed with you? What thread are you still tugging at? We may not get all the answers, but we do get each other. Something honest. Something enduring. Until next time, be gentle with your ghosts. Till next time, Ellie.